It's the holiday season, so it's time to rank, it's time to judge. So pour some cocoa and grab some fudge. Wait, alright, I'm running out of rhymes. Yep, it's the year-end ranking video once again. And as always, I feel like we need some sort of grandiose intro, but I've been doing this long enough now. You know what time it is. Top 25, we're gonna get right into it. It's been a big year for me. Almost 60 new credits, my first international trip, knocking on the door of number 300, and some overdue rerides and favorites that deserve additional evaluation. I bet you're curious to see how these experiences have shaken up my coaster rankings. How did my newest credits fare? Were any of them top 25 material? Did rerides change my opinions on anything significantly? Was anything good enough to dethrone my top 5, which has been pretty consistent over the past few years? Well, let's not dilly-dally any further. Come with me, and you'll see in a world of pure... Wait, that's not a Christmas song. Here are my top 25 roller coasters. So, at this point, I've been doing a top 25 video for a few years now, and I have a nice backlog of data to use for comparison with my current rankings. And when I first started out, I tried to rank my coasters as objectively as possible, putting aside my personal biases, but the older I get, the more the line blurs and the more I believe that there's no such thing as true objectivity. So IDK, take these ratings with a grain of salt. They're my opinions. If you disagree with my opinions, feel free to air it out in the comments. I could use the engagement. And one other thing, a few years back I introduced my patented Thusi compass to characterize my coaster preferences, and I didn't use it last year, but I figured I would bring it up again to refresh you all, because I think it's pretty helpful. The scale is simple. On one axis we have theming versus ride experience, and on the other we have force versus float. A ride experience here is referring to the experience of the coaster itself, like the action that the ride vehicle is doing in the context of the rest of the ride. Basically, this axis categorizes what matters more, what the ride vehicle is doing or what is going on around the ride vehicle. I hope that makes sense. And force versus float is pretty self-evident. Do you prefer something that's smooth and refined, or do you prefer something that rips your face off? Simple enough, right? Someone who's, say, like a Disney adult would probably be around here, while a big B&M hyper guy would land around here. Where do you lie? Comment with your placement. I lie here. So please keep that in mind when you whinge about my coaster placements. This is what I prefer, and we all have our own preferences. That's what makes ranking roller coasters fun. Great. Let's go. As per usual, I will begin with a quick rundown of my top 100, stopping briefly to discuss new credits. If you just want to skip to the top 25, head over to the timestamp I have listed below. And go! The Queen of Spade doesn't have the punchiest launch, but the cute little I-305 impression the ride dutifully performs once the catch car disengages offers some snappy transitions, decent positives, and even some airtime. This is the funniest ride in existence. I love it. It helps that the wacky inversions ooze character, and Vekoma's take on the Arrow Mega Looper dishes out some genuinely insane forces, if you can get past that comically poor tracking. Honestly, for me, it's part of the appeal. Feels like a slightly less forceful Batman clone with a custom layout and a fun little pre-lift. And that's pretty high praise. Maybe the second funniest coaster in the world after Goodery, it's a 235-foot tall Arrow Mine Train with some incredible views and one of the most diabolical first drops in the world. I miss you, buddy. A surprisingly powerful and bizarre jank fest that throws you out of your seat at any opportunity, and I love it. Even if the crazy airtime, laterals, and hang times start to genuinely hurt after a while. The anti-Tatsu weaving through the trees near ground level and rarely doling out the forces you would expect from a B&M flyer, but it's so joyous and pure fun that I end up liking it anyway. Not the best Arrow Looper out there, but it is a pocket rocket with great forces and wicked strong pacing, amplified by the indoor setting and awesome rock work. Does anyone else think this is as janky as all the other Arrows, or is that just me? It took me 5 goddamn years to get this credit, but Steel Curtain more than exceeded my expectations as it blitzed through its dense support structure, doling out great positives and some okay airtime. A very pleasant surprise. A serviceable mock launch that is defined by its awesomely claustrophobic layout, decent inversions, and an absolutely epic Junior Immelman after that somewhat flaccid second launch. No, I did not get an ENSO, it wasn't running, but I really want to. The best B&M dive with a stellar first drop and some awesome positives on the loop and Immelman combo, but it can't fully break away from the dive machine's original sin and ends its powerhouse layout with an utterly boring and forceless finale. I feel like this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I had fun on TT2, but I wasn't wowed. Like, there's strong airtime on the top hat, and I love the backwards spike that leaves you dangling forever. I'm also a sucker for good backwards positives, but it just wasn't punchy enough for my taste. And that's the top 50. Now on to the... Before we continue, concerning news. After being forced out of power in a hostile takeover, Celine Bassoul, the former Six Flags CEO, has been spotted by my sources traveling to Vienna, Austria, in a private jet painted like the Six Flags bus. Substantiated rumors have indicated that the former Six Flags CEO has arranged a secret underground meeting with the capo regimes of Wiener Prater in a bid to take over the park and close over half its rides. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel so I have enough money to bribe the Austrian Cosa Nostra and prevent the wholesome hucksters of Vienna from meeting Celine's fate. Thank you. I'm a sucker for backwards positives, which is why I love Flash and its awesomely twisted layout way more than I was expecting. The launches are okay, and the airtime isn't amazing, which is why it's not higher, but I like the Super Boomerang. I mean, I also like the regular Vekoma Boomerang. I only got one cold back row ride and a bunch of infuriating row 2 placements, but Osiris sits perfectly at the intersection of old school and new school B&M, with more whip than Banshee and plenty of crushing positives. Awesome theming too, which just further enhances that spectacular layout. This thing has more violent whip and airtime than any other B&M invert, and I love it for that. And plus the underground terrain layout of Nemi is masterful in how it enhances that frenetic pacing. However, there are a few moments where it steps off the gas, and it's shorter than I would like. Otherwise, awesome ride. On the weaker end of hybrid conversions, but that's mostly down to its diminutive size. Pacing is not a problem at all in my opinion, even on that third lap. It just has some dud turnarounds and it's missing the sustained airtime that makes the best RMC's top 25 contenders. The newest Intamin swing launch is a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, but boy does it play those many trades very well, with wicked airtime, great pacing, awesome hang time in spots, and a long, satisfying duration that is not really negatively impacted by that really fun swing launch sequence. Alright, we made it to the top 25, and now it's time for the real heavy hitters. Now that I've passed the 250 credit mark, every single one of these upcoming coasters rests comfortably within the top 10% of all my credits. Every single one of these rides are at least a 9 out of 10, the cream of the crop, the best of the best, at least in my opinion, so please keep that in mind when we go through this list. Any coaster that is here is an incredible coaster and one that I would lap basically forever if given the chance. Okay? Understand? Let's do it. We start our top 25 with an absolutely incredible Woody, the inimitable legend at Holiday World. And I just want to emphasize here again, this ride is a 9 out of 10. The Legend is one of my all-time favorite coasters, a frenetic CCI with crushing forces and character in spades. If you can't tell from that, I love it. They call the Legend a lateral machine, and it absolutely is, blowing the similarly principled Twister out of the water. But it's a multifaceted coaster as well, with a long and satisfying layout. The double helix is the furious highlight, but every turn in the second half whips you around with reckless abandon. And plus, there's some awesome airtime moments. Many people characterize a good Woody as an out-of-control experience, but the Legend is in a league of its own. So then why isn't it ranked higher? Well, first off, like I mentioned before, all of these coasters are really good. And in addition, it's a bit less consistent than I would like. The initial sequence leading from the first drop into the turnaround is a bit too reserved for my liking, and the airtime hills are maddeningly inconsistent. Some of them just don't really hit. Still, I want to stress these are minor gripes, and I love the Legend. Holiday World is truly blessed to have such an absolutely stacked coaster lineup. You know, I was gonna keep my reviews of previously discussed, not new credits shorter, but I didn't do a good job with this one. Oh, thank God, at least this is a new one, so no need for brevity. Anyways, I finally got my last B&M Giga this summer, ending my journey with the one that started it all. Leviathan does feel a little rough around the edges and unrefined compared to the other two Cedar Fair Gigas that came after it, but that works in its favor a lot of the time. In fact, on the Fury to Orion scale, Levi ends up feeling a lot more furious than its younger brother. Starting with an incredible, chucking first drop, the coaster absolutely tears through its admittedly brief course with savage pacing, great airtime, and fearsome speed. I will contend that the first airtime hill is a teensy bit too tall for its own good, and there is a pretty lengthy dead spot after that awesomely fast turnaround, but Levi finishes with a bang at least, absolutely chucking riders out of their seats on the final airtime hills as it charges into its too tall brake run. And another thing too, unlike so many of its brethren, the forces on Levi are not constrained to one side of the G-force axis. The positive Gs this thing doles out are strong, stronger than any B&M that rests above the track. And these Gs lend Leviathan a savage character that many of B&M's Hypers and Orions sorely lack. With that said, Leviathan is far from a perfect ride, but overall, I'm a fan. If you want to hear more about Leviathan or any of the other coasters of Canada's Wonderland, check out my video where I rank the 10 best coasters at the park. Also, like, comment, subscribe. While I am coming around to the Alpi camp as time wears on, I still cannot deny BGT's Blue Behemoth the top spot. And while there are many reasons why I believe Mont2 to be the king of the B&M inverts, the solid pacing, the whippy inversions, that absolutely nuts drop off the mid-course, it mostly boils down to the ludicrous and preposterously forceful Batwing. My God, I think I'm gonna bust just thinking about it. Hey, that was short and sweet. Nice. I'm sorry, buddy, I still love you. The new lift makes the initial drop and overbank even better than before, but it's just been too long since I've had a Millie ride that absolutely wowed me. I've had such rides, believe me, but they were years ago. Get Millie at the right time, and the drawn-out hills turn into feasts of Flowjector. The repetitive overbanks on Millennium Island become whippy delights. But those days might just be behind the aging Millie, a coaster that still feels futuristic but becomes a bit more outdated with each passing year. I still love it though, and I still have rides in it that have absolutely blown me away, so please, Millie, let's get back together again soon. Another new credit, and one I've been waiting to get for a long time. And given that I grew up pretty close to this park, I don't really have a good reason to justify why it took me until 2025 to go to Six Flags New England and ride a coaster that has been on my bucket list over the past quarter century. In the interim, its vaunted statue as once the world's best roller coaster continued to shrink, and the ride lost its beloved T-bars for the dreaded U-Brick. The world's best steel roller coaster has certainly seen better days, but even in its currently neutered state, Superman did not disappoint. It's a weird but delightful combination of Darien Lake Superman, Millennium Force, and a Morgan Hyper, I guess. Mix them all in a blender and you have a worthy recipient of its numerous accolades, at least back in the early 2000s. It's cliche to say, but the layout of this ride is basically perfect, giving great ejector and whip throughout the out and back outward leg, contrasted with awesome positives in the low to the ground twister finale. That fourth hill is an absolute all-timer, an absurd moment of sustained ejector airtime, but the ride isn't perfect. My main complaint with Soup's layout-wise is that some of the airtime hills on the second half are surprisingly weak, which I attribute to the somewhat awkward and imprecise profiling of these early Intamin hypers. This profiling quirk is common to the original Six Flags Supermans. SFNE's installation is a bit better than the original clones at Darien Lake in Six Flags America, may it rest in peace, but it still feels like most of the hills end earlier than they should, if that makes any sense. It's weird. A minor qualm again, though. I believe that with some profiling improvements, Superman the Ride would be positively flawless. To sum things up here, if Intamin made this layout in like 2010, it would probably still be the best coaster in the world. A quick restraint-related side note, yes, the U-bricks indeed suck, and I hope to God they get replaced sometime in the near future, but the ride is more than strong enough to make up for the shortcoming of its restraints, so please don't let the U-bricks ruin the ride for you. This may seem crazy high at first glance, but oh my god, Vortex at night in the front row transcends reality. While my rides on the layout-cloned bat at Kings Island and an early morning Vortex ride were great but not amazing, my one front row ride in the darkness exuded a magical energy. Cocooned in the comforting embrace of its bulky, swinging cars, Vortex teleported me to the Rhine River, staring at the Big Bad Wolf's legendary finale in the VHS-filtered days of my youth. Needless to say, that night ride left a pretty positive impression, but beyond my emotional connection to the ride, Vortex Wormed Up is just absurdly good. Dropping off Wonder Mountain, Vortex takes no prisoners, swinging and flinging like a violent tornado as it tears a path of destruction through the valley. The wild swings are paired with positive G's that left me genuinely concerned about my safety. In the best possible way. By the time I charged into the final breaks with absurd speed, I was breathless. The pacing is that relentless. Sure, the ride is over in a flash, and I dream about what 10 to 15 more seconds of prime ride time could do for this already amazing coaster. But even with its brevity, I hit those final breaks beyond the horizontal, hearing colors and seeing sounds. And that's more than enough to vaunt this loony late model Arrow into my top 25. Again, watch the Canada's Wonderland video if you want more detail, thanks. This glorious update to the formerly dreadful Wildcat is the first in a string of mid-tier RMCs that find themselves in my upper teens. And this kitty has claws. From the moment you drop off the station into that ridiculous pre-lift, you know you're dealing with a monster. The first drop is elite, and WCR tears through its first half with whippy transitions, wicked pacing, and one awesome airtime hill. Big upgrade from the original ride, which Wildcat's Revenge quite literally towers over. My big qualm with West Coast racers here is what happens at the tail end of the layout. Once you roll through the sorta kinda reverse Cobra roll, WCR rolls through a bland turnaround and then enters a series of poorly profiled bunny hills that are legitimately uncomfortable. In the grand scheme of the ride, these are of course small nitpicks, but there's some tough competition at the top. I guess this is Wind Chaser now? I get it, that's a stupid name, so I'm just going to ignore it. Despite its pint-sized presentation, Storm Chaser is one of the most violent RMCs around, and the ride experience is nothing short of concerning. After that first rolling drop spins you around like an untossed salad, the relentless airtime that follows throughout is so strong that it borders on uncomfortable. Especially as the coaster bleeds off speed in the finale, and the hills start to become a little bit too small for their own good. But hey, if you took this consistent intensity and like doubled the scale, we would really be talking. Big grain of salt here once again. I've not been back to ride Lightning Rod since the world's first launch Woody was bastardized with its high-speed chain. I'm sure such a change has a significant effect on the once peerless ride experience Lightning Rod had to offer. But what I can state with conviction is that the layout after the initial ascent, while short, does remain as elite as ever. The overbank offers endless, awesome float, and the quad down is the stuff of legend for a reason. I've kind of avoided going back to Dollywood because I don't want to see how much further this once great coaster could fall, robbed of its incredible upward launch. I love that launch. I guess having Lightning Rod in its current state, though, is better than losing it completely, right? Do you hear me, Nemesis fans? I spent years trumpeting Diamondback as the best of these stateside B&M hypers, and yet 3 years after its strong top 15 finish, it doesn't even make the top 25. What happened? Well, part of it is that D-Back just wasn't as good as it was in the past. And part of it is that I rode Behemoth this year, which absolutely blew its KI sister out of the water that makes up its final splashdown. I said all this stuff about Diamondback before, but I was wrong. Behemoth is the platonic ideal of the B&M hyper, a flawless execution of the model's philosophy from beginning to end. It does not stray at all from the established formula, but its predictable nature is quickly forgiven after experiencing its endless, delicious buffet of floater airtime. Every single hill hits, even after the mid-course, which is something that no other B&M hyper can claim, at least the ones that I've ridden. That delightful airtime is further plussed with great positives through all of the valleys. Even the two helixes, which follow a light, delicate touch from the mid-course, are solidly forceful. To this impeccable recipe, B&M added the final piece de resistance with the long boys, offering actual whip through that epic first drop, many airtime hills, and that tasty hammerhead turnaround. With all these strong ingredients joined together in perfect harmony, it's no surprise that Behemoth takes the cake as the best B&M hyper. At least, on the North American continent. Shambhala, I am coming for you, hopefully soon. A pity poor King's Dominion. It's an utter insult that this former breeding ground of amusement innovation has been saddled with a wing coaster that doesn't even crack my top 100 to replace the legendary but problematic Volcano the Blast coaster. Meanwhile, our maple syrup neighbors up north get to add Volcano's true successor to the already absurd embarrassment of riches. Sometimes life just isn't fair. And not only did Canada's Wonderland take a gamble by commissioning one of the most unique coasters of the 2020s, Premier knocked the damn thing out of the park. Alpenfury is long, oozing with personality, and absolutely wicked. From the moment that shocking airtime hill pulls you into the bottom of Wonder Mountain, plunging you into a cavern of sensory overload that shoots you out of a goddamn volcano, Alpenfury takes no prisoners. This is how you do a modern looper. Wacky and disorienting inversions, balls to the wall pacing, and great positives in the valleys to complement the oodles of whip and hang time. The non-stop flurry of inversions will chill you to the bone. Now I do have to contend that the ride focuses on inversions to its detriment, and a few of the more generic rolls in the back half would be way more effective as ejector airtime hills, like that positively rabid bunny hill after the double roll. But you know the refrain by now, these are minor nitpicks. Beyond the comparable lack of airtime, the merely serviceable trains, and the utterly purgatorial queue-line experience, Premier and Cedar Fair have delivered a near-faultless roller coaster that somehow manages to differentiate itself from the rest of this amazing park. I did a detailed element-by-element breakdown of Alpenfury in my Canada's Wonderland rec. I know, I'm sorry to shill it again, but... All that praise, and Alpenfury still fails to take the crown. Coming in at number 14, my highest ranked new credit is from across the pond. Not even on the same continent. Take that, Canada. My best international credit is also Great Britain's newest coaster, and the coaster to finally dethrone my beloved Big One and snatch the record for the tallest coaster in the British Isles. Yes, it's Hyperia, the wonderfully bizarre mock hyper that makes its home on the island of Thorpe Park. Hyperia is weird, very weird. I mean, just walking into Thorpe Park over the bridge and staring at the bizarrely shaped structure at the back of the island, you can immediately tell this thing is unconventional. And nothing confirms that quirk more than the first drop. Beyond vertical with a crazy mid-drop twist that sends you sailing back towards the station. You're out of your seat from the moment you crest the drop and stare down into oblivion, especially if you are blessed enough to experience this coaster in the back. I will say I was a tad bit disappointed with the 180-degree turn itself. I expected the lateral snap to be far more violent, but the drop is still amazing. I'm happy to report that it only gets wilder from here. An epic junior Immelman with an awesome head chopper and seconds of sustained ejector leads into the delightfully disorienting overbank roll thingy which melds airtime and hang time in seamless symphony. The superlative sequence concludes with an epic tall stall, providing a near eternity of endless dangle around the coaster's thickly woven support structure. And then the party's over. My main complaint with Hyperia is the same complaint held by absolutely everybody else. Its length. It's too short, not just due to the lack of track, but due to the way the coaster absolutely murders its momentum, charging into the trim brake valley at full speed and sapping the life out of the train before limply flitting to the finish line. But it really speaks to the quality of Hyperia that it still lands in my top 15 despite such a weak finale. Its incredibly bizarre layout and design make it stand out, make it a singular experience that feels like no other coaster. And I value that. Hyperia might only have like 35 seconds of prime ride time, but those 35 seconds, like the first 30 seconds of those 35 seconds are impeccable. I can only dream of how much more elite this coaster would be if it were given the track length it deserves. Quick side note, I didn't find Hyperia rough at all, but I've heard that the coaster has been very inconsistent in that area, and others have found it brutally rough, so your mileage may vary. Phantom remains as bizarre and characterful as ever, and night rides on Kennywood's crown jewel continue to blow me away. The absolutely insane ejector of the finale contrasts beautifully with the wicked speed and crushing positives of that first half. It's not perfect, and there are some weird pacing moments, but the terrifically terrained bastard child layout lends this already commendable coaster oodles and oodles of character. I hope Phantom is around for a long, long time. No, I still have not been back to Busch Gardens Tampa in 3 years. Yes, I only got one ride on Iron Gwazi early in the day before I was warmed up. Yes, I absolutely believe that it is a better ride than the ranking implies. But until I get back down there and get a proper redemption ride, I will have to take my single week showing as gospel. At the very least, that one ride showed me that a dead cold Iron Gwazi is still really damn good. I look forward to revisiting this beast in the future. Every year that I come back to visit Cedar Point, my opinion of Maverick continues to rise. And while many other coasters feel more and more outdated as time goes on, Maverick ages like a fine wine. That first drop is still peerless, the airtime is still absurd, and the whip feels stronger over time as the modern coasters continue to prioritize flow over power. I'm still of the opinion that its height holds it back from true greatness, especially when it requires a run of brutal trims right after that punchy second launch, but nevertheless, a near top 10 finish shows just what greatness can come when a coaster maximizes every inch of its footprint. Now, time for the top 10. Okay, if you thought my Gwazi gap was egregious, I haven't been on Velocicoaster since 2021. IDK what to say, guys, I don't like Florida, so this take is not outdated really. It's more like a half-drunk jug of expired milk that has mold growing out of it in the back of your fridge. You could probably use some refreshing is what I'm saying. I'm thus going to defer to my earlier opinions on the ride and not pontificate on an experience that's beginning to feel a bit like ancient history. Velocicoaster is obviously a very complete package. It has punchy launches, lots of airtime, the batshit Mosasaurus roll, and a stellar contrast between the blitzy first half and the more drawn-out second half. Still, I think the layout outside of the aforementioned Mosasaurus roll is a tad bit generic. Jack-of-all-trades syndrome like I discussed earlier with Tota Pulchra Es, which doesn't leave the ride with that much character. It's an incredible coaster, and a top 10 finish again is really good, but I don't spend my nights dreaming about Velocicoaster and dreaming about when I can get back on this thing. It'll happen eventually, like probably when I get down to Epic. Ah, El Toro, my home park hero for 2 decades running. With Six Flags' honestly shocking decision to actually invest in the future of one of Great Adventure's signature attractions, we know that the next few years for this once groundbreaking Woody actually look bright. And the small bits of work that have already been done to the ride have improved things a little, but there is still plenty of metaphorical and literal bumps in the once glassy layout that could use some smoothing. Maybe once the renovations are complete, it will be as incredible as it was back in 2006. But I still put up with the rough ride and occasional dead spots it has right now every time I visit my home park, just to experience that first drop, 2 camelbacks, and the rolling thunder hill. Those 4 hills are peerless and keep me coming back to Great Adventure decades after the park began its slow, sad decline. Been a while since I've been to Carowinds too, to tell you the truth, but unlike Velocicoaster, Fury is a ride that I'm really itching to get back on. IDKY, it's not super unique and it doesn't have the character of many of the other coasters in my top 10, but it's just so well done that I can't help but leave the ride feeling impressed. Nothing Fury does is groundbreaking, but it's just a pitch-perfect execution of B&M's ethos. Outside of one notable dead spot after the Hive Dive, including that unfortunate trim before an actually solid airtime hill, Fury can do no wrong. That first drop is epic and endless. The turnarounds and valleys are forceful. The layout is long and satisfying, and the sense of speed is truly impressive, especially throughout the low-to-the-ground sections that really differentiate Fury from its smaller brethren. And in some of the strongest airtime B&M has ever dished out in that sweet finale, and I can't not love this thing. Most people consider Fury to be B&M's crowning achievement, and I certainly do not disagree. It's kind of crazy this thing is 10 years old already, wow. Ready for this, kids? Trimless Voyage is really good. I made it out to Hollywood Nights for the first time this summer, and to my chagrin, the pitch-black trimless night rides indeed elevated the already outstanding Voyage experience. Voyage After Dark takes every good aspect of an archetypical beast night ride and adds a hefty dose of actual G-forces. The outward leg is fun and floaty, still the weakest part in my opinion, but the twisting midsection undulating through the woods under the cover of night is transcendent. I've been on this ride enough times to have the full layout memorized, unfortunately, but even advanced knowledge of the incoming twists and turns left me in the clutches of a violent sea, holding on and praying for safe passage. By the time the train glided through the non-functional trims and began its return run, tossing the train around and floating through the calm twilight, I gave up trying to actively perceive the experience as anything that could adequately be captured by the limited contrivance of human sensation. The voyage departed the plane of the mundane. It became a spiritual journey, an exercise in supplication that if you give up and give in to what the voyage has to offer, you can achieve coaster nirvana. Well, that's something, isn't it? But still, the voyage rests on the outside of my top 5 looking in, and you may be wondering why that is the case after I likened a Hollywood Nights ride to achieving enlightenment. It's simple, really. When I ride a coaster, I'm not seeking nirvana, I'm seeking chaos. I'm the type of person who wants a roller coaster to rip their face off and reorganize their internal organs. But if you don't have that deranged passion for unbridled intensity, the Voyage can stake a legitimate claim as the greatest coaster on this goddamn planet. I cannot fault those who subscribe to that statement. But if you want something that truly cannot be experienced anything else, you're gonna have to up the forces a little bit. Speaking of coasters that rearrange your internal organs, Skyrush is up next. And I didn't get to ride it this year, RIP, but I've been on the Bee enough times to know exactly what sort of brutality Skyrush has to offer. The first drop makes Skyrush's savagery immediately clear. It begins with ejector airtime that will put the vast majority of other coaster drops to shame, and then the mid-drop kink threatens to sever your torso from your legs and catapult your untethered body into the walls of the chocolate factory. The powerful pullout and epic sustained, speedy ejector hill that follow are just icing on the cake, a truly flawless initial sequence. Skyrush does become rather inconsistent after this opening salvo though, with somewhat flaccid turnarounds and a disappointingly tame Stangle dive, but the remaining ejector hills are absurd enough to ensure that Skyrush maintains my utmost respect. With the new restraints also ensuring a mostly pain-free ride experience, Hershey's first Hyper is better than ever. And now we reach the top 5, with an absolute titan of the amusement industry. Long the consensus pick for the world's best coaster, the Thuzy hive mind, I feel, has begun to turn on RMC's original Hyper over the past few years. But I feel like Steel Vengeance is beginning to bend and flex its way back to a well-deserved redemption arc. Which is funny to think about, given that I still imagine this ride as like brand new after almost 8 years after its opening, but yeah, anyways, Steve is still really good. Anyone still sour on this 20-story tall feat of engineering should take one look at that faultless first drop and interminable 2 Outer Banks and tell me how it is remotely possible to improve upon Steve's initial sequence. In fact, the first 2 laps of Steve are generally without fault, flying through the course with whippy inversions and powerful airtime. Steve puts every inch of its 200 feet of momentum to good use and charges through its course like a runaway freight train. That is, until you hit the mid-course brake run. Now, for the first time this year, I felt Steve consistently trim at the mid-course, and though I was initially disappointed, I actually found that the trims slightly improved the experience of the second half. The rolls and inversions became even more floaty, and the previously jerky finale became more bearable. I still don't love that final sequence, but it is much more tolerable when it is slowed down a bit. The repetitive nature of the final sequence remains my main sticking point with Steve, finishing things off with a frustratingly uncomfortable whimper. But the top 5 is rarefied air, and Steve absolutely deserves to be here. If the shock factor from last year's podium placing of this 35-year-old Arrow Mega Looper hasn't worn off yet, allow me to defibrillate you once again. Viper at Six Flags Magic Mountain is, in my very studied and objective opinion, the best looping coaster in the world. And there's nothing you can do to make me change my mind. This thing is off the fucking leash, and I absolutely adore it. Viper has it all. Positives, hang time, laterals, whip, Jesus. Starting off with an unhinged first drop that dives down from near hypercoaster heights and whips you around ferociously. The first half delivers a masterclass in pacing with insane speed and utterly crushing positive Gs. And those loops are otherworldly, with pummeling positives that threaten to fold your body into human origami. It's a lot, but I personally love it. Then you pop into the mid-course with a violent ejector and slam to a stop, slithering seamlessly into a graceful second half, stuffed to the gills with delicious hang time. That slow but still snappy batwing in the back row still remains my favorite inversion, and while a faster lap on the Serpent will run through the corkscrews a bit too fast for my liking, they're still a lot of fun. The split disposition of this rusty behemoth lends Viper a lot of personality, and I contend that it is far more characterful than a modern, CAD-designed coaster. But unlike many of its hand-bent brethren, Viper still manages to be glassy smooth 35 years after its debut. And that does not mean it's not janky. Viper will certainly bite you if you do not treat it with respect. But if you keep your head back and approach Viper with the reverence it deserves, you can lap it pain-free, and thoroughly enjoy what just might be Ron Toomer's crowning achievement. Okay, a lot of people will disagree with me on that last statement, especially once we consider our next pick. Honestly, this coaster and my next choice are a toss-up. Depending on the day, I might favor one over the other, but Viper and my number 3 pick are my 2 favorite coasters. So you can probably guess what's going to snag the bronze medal. Remember last year's video when I got a trimless front row Zen ride on my beloved Magnum and claimed with authority that it was the best Magnum ride I ever experienced? What, you didn't watch it? Well, you should, after this one though. Anyways, I was wrong, because this year Magnum was having a little trouble with its trim. That meant that it would break down with clockwork regularity and basically ruined any chance to experience a consistent run of rides, but the one time I was able to sneak on in the few cycles of vainglorious operation, the stars aligned, and I got a front row, back car, trimless circuit with a full train in the baking heat of summer. And god damn! As I've stated previously, you owe it to yourself to get a trimless Magnum ride. It can sometimes be a little hard to finagle, but a trimless lap elevates the second half to stratospheric heights. No trims turn the somewhat pedestrian turnaround into a rampaging rodeo and make the already absurd airtime of the finale that much crazier. and in a warmed-up train that sails over the constantly underrated third hill, giving multiple seconds of sustained ejector. Yeah, it was nuts. I got off my ultimate Magnum ride in stunned silence, wishing that every one of my laps on my baby could be like this, but even when the train is tamed by the trims, Magnum is still an absolute masterpiece. He will continue to lend its vaunted finale an almost mythical reputation, and the otherworldly objector of those triangle hills earns its filleted praise. It's just that good. There's nothing else like Magnum's finale on Earth. I am glad they finally fixed the trims, else it probably would have been impossible to ride every single row of Magnum in one day like I did later in the year. Maybe 18 rides on one day are better than one ultimate ride and 3 hours of breakdowns, but damn, I still dream about that trimless ride. Yes, we C-set with a comical overspeed. Yes, there's no way such absurd pace is sustainable, but who do I need to pay to make it happen again? Hit me up, please. Yet another tragic victim of this year's missed Magic Mountain trip lies a few feet away from my beloved Viper. And there's a reason why I have dubbed this little tract of land Arrow Heaven. Yes, right next to the masterful Mega Looper lies what might be the ultimate Arrow apprentice. Behold Alan Schilke's craziest creation. Behold X2. I have said a lot of things about X2 over the years, and they boil down to 3 main points. 1, the ride is absolutely nuts. Nothing else really feels like it. The combination of insane forces and 4 dimensions of motion is just overwhelming. 2, the ride's more reserved moments, the 0G flip airtime hill, the backwards flip in the second half, are some of the purest moments of peaceful bliss on any coaster as you float through the air untethered, a perfect contrast to the deranged nature of the rest of the ride. And 3, the ride is short and a bouncy mess, and that rough spot after the final Raven turn is inexcusably bad. That certainly has not changed. I always hoped in the back of my mind that the years would be kind to X2, but it is unfortunately falling victim to its age. It's growing rougher and rougher with each passing season, and who knows, that may have played a factor in the tragic loss that occurred at Magic Mountain earlier this year. I'm not here to speculate. But despite its growing flaws, X2 remains a singular experience, one that is more than worthy of a number 2 spot in my top 25.
Gentlemen, start your engine!
Finally, after months of waiting, Cedar Flags opened Intimidator 305 after a long, trying off-season that consisted of painting it orange. For whatever stupid reason, though, the previously somewhat reliable Intamin Giga began to melt wheels and throw up temper tantrums like a moody teenager. So it took me 2 visits and a long 3-hour delay on my second visit to finally reunite with my number 1, now rethemed from I-305 to P-305 to Pantherian. This time, though, it was at night. These were my first night rides on Project Timidator Therian 305, and I was lucky enough to rack 5 magnificent laps before the 90-mile-an-hour tear through the cold November air became a little too much to handle. These weren't the fastest rides I've had on the Intamin Giga, after all they were in November, but the darkness elevated the ride's already peerless sense of speed. Flying through those low-to-the-ground whips and turns in the pitch black only adds to the incredible disorientation that I-305 is famous for. The crushing, gray-out-inducing forces feel that much more frightening when you can barely trust your eyes in the first place. And there's not much more I have to say about I-305 that I have not relayed already extensively. I've done a half-hour deep dive on this thing, and you should watch that video if you want to know more of my thoughts. But despite the fresh coat of paint and the half-assed retheme, the old, stupidly intense I-305 remains, crushing bones and stealing souls like it has for the past decade and a half. It's straight up too much for a lot of people still, and I can sympathize with those who don't enjoy feeling their souls being slowly squeezed out of their bodies through the first turn. But I-305 is a uniquely powerful machine. A ride that powers full throttle to the ragged edge of human endurance and holds you there. Nothing can compare. So that's it, my top 25 for 2025, but I've been doing this for a few years now, and that means I have some data we can compare to, so let's take a look at how my top 10 has done over the past few years. As you can see here, it's been an interesting journey. Basically, X2 and i305 have almost always found themselves towards the top, X2 starting in 4th but jumping up to 1st in 2023 before remaining in number 2, which it has been for the past 2 years. i305 has never dropped down past number 2, which I guess shows you what my kind of opinions are in coasters. Steel Vengeance had the number 1 spot actually for a couple of years, but it started to drop lower and lower as the years have gone by. I don't think that's that surprising. I feel like a lot of people feel that way as well. And further down, we have a couple of rides that weren't there before. Fury was not in my original 2021 list and placed in 4th place in its first year of 2022, but it has continued to fall since then to number 8. I think that has more to do with just the quality of the rides in my top 10 than Fury's experience itself. I still absolutely love that ride. But as you know, I do prefer intense experiences, so it's not that surprising to see Skyrush a little bit higher. Velocicoaster actually started off at number 6 below Skyrush in my early years, but it's dropped a while, and I feel like I need to get back on the ride soon so I can have a more informed opinion about it. Honestly though, I still feel like number 10 makes sense for it, at least based on my experience. The biggest and most dramatic changes were with Magnum XL 200 and Viper. 2021 was like my first year back into the Thusi hobby, and my preferences were a little less realized, I guess you could say, which is why that Magnum only came in at number 8 and Viper wasn't even on the map until 2024. But boy, I've definitely learned a lot more about what I like in those ensuing years, and as a result, Magnum and Viper have jumped up significantly, now fighting between 3 and 4, where I expect them to stay for quite a while. Like I mentioned before, they are my 2 favorite coasters, and I go back and forth on them all the time. And finally, there's the Voyage, which did not appear until 2024, as I had not been in the holiday world before 2024. And it started off at number 9, but the night rides I got this year did manage to elevate it a little bit, and push it above El Toro, which was formerly my favorite Woody. Fine, you can have it, Voyage. You deserve it. So yeah, we've officially come to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. I have a feeling that next year is going to be a pretty big year for new credits, and I'm very excited to see the next steps for this channel as I open a new, exciting chapter in my life. More on that in the near future. Stay tuned for lots of coming content, more elegies, more vlogs maybe, more everything. IDK, I'm too far in to stop at this point, so let's just keep pressing forward. If you made it this far, why not check out this video that YouTube thinks you might enjoy? Subscribe to the channel as well so you don't miss my next videos, and give the video a like. It is a huge help for a small channel such as myself to be seen in the YouTube algorithm. Hype helps a lot too, so please hype the video if you can. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all again next year.